Welcome, everybody, to the April 2023 meeting of the Metropolitan Old Time Radio Club. And we've already got a nice group of people here, and it's wonderful to see all of you. My goodness. It seems as though the year is just slipping away from us. I guess first up, do we have any new timers to this meeting or visitors to this meeting? Can you either raise a hand or shout out or some such thing? I guess not.
Yes.
All right. Oh, yeah, was that a yes?
I see a hand up.
Oh, well, let me see where the hand is. My goodness. Who had a hand up? Ah, you've got a better eye than I.
1, 2, 3, 4 column. 1, 2, 3, 4 down on our screen.
We've all got different screen. Is it
It's a telephone number.
Oh, it's a telephone number. Okay. That's
Well, it looks like Joni.
well,
Joni Leonard with her hand up on my screen.
Oh, it was our cursor. I'm so sorry.
I didn't see any hands, but anyway, meanwhile, some other people have no, it's just delightful. First off, first order of business, we had some pretty significant club member birthdays this week. We've had Mark Bush, who hit the big 8-0. I believe it was on Tuesday. Congratulations, Mark. Yay.
Yay.
Really exciting stuff. And on Sunday, Jack French will hit 87. So that's also a huge thing. So my thought was in beginning that we should sing some round of happy birthday, first to Mark, because we're late on his birthday, and then maybe another separate happy birthday to Jack, where we're ahead of his birthday. And what I have offered to do, and what John Abbott is going to make possible, is to take the recording of the birthday song for Jack French and email the link to Kathy so she can play it to him on his birthday. So please, normally we would smash both birthday songs together, but not this year. These birthdays are too important. So first off, let's sing to Mark Bush. Belated.
Hey, wait a minute. It's Melanie Altman's birthday, too.
Who?
Melanie Altman shares the day with Jack French on the 16th.
Oh, really?
Oh,
okay. Well, I didn't know
Derek
that.
This is Derek.
Excuse me?
This is Derek, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great to know, Derek. Thanks. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. So we can make the first song to Mark and Melanie, and we will not ask the lady's age because that would be entirely inappropriate. But and then we'll just pause a second or two and then sing one to Jack. So so without further ado, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mark and Melanie. Happy birthday to you.
and many more.
Who is many
I think
more?
Zoom just crashed somewhere on the West Coast.
And now we'll sing one to Jack in anticipation of his birthday. So, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Jack. Happy birthday to you.
It sounds like an awful bunch of inebriated people.
And the night is yet young.
And that's the way we like it. Yes.
There you go. So, thank you all. On a less ebullient note, to those of you who haven't heard, Jack French has just been diagnosed with, it sounds like stage 4 lymphoma, and he is at home in hospice care. They prefer no phone calls and no visits. I think that's as much for Kathy as it is for Jack. But Jack apparently is very weak and really can barely talk. So emails are very much encouraged because Jack enjoys hearing Kathy read the emails to him. So for those of you who are so inclined, if you wish to shoot off a message to Jack, I know he'd appreciate hearing from all of you. And I'm sorry to start this off on a really sad note.
Sure.
And I know we will all keep Jack and Kathy in our prayers. And then the only other announcement I have on a less dreary note is Bob Cockrum, who is our editor of Radio Recall, is still stepping down in October of this year. So we need to find a way to replace him. Not that we really could replace him, but if people are interested in wading into that and editing Radio Recall, or maybe a couple of you, you could have a tag team or a duo team, that would be great. And the club would certainly pay for, if you needed a special kind of software or something like that to make it happen. We certainly have money in the treasury to help with those expenses. So now moving on to the substance of our meeting tonight. We have the first 15 with Frank Morgan, and the title of the show, I believe, is Jump Jump and the Snow Queen, which absolutely intrigues me. So Frank, I will give you co-hosting privileges, and you can take it from there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, you are now a co-host of the meeting, Frank.
Okay. All right, let me.
And everyone else, please mute, because it just helps with the sound quality.
And let me. All right, I'm going to. Going back to stop share because we'll do it again. Where are we here? I had to hit the share sound before I hit the share.
Ah,
Now we're ready to. There we go. All right. Well, tonight, it's for me what I've called a unique opportunity. It's one that I not had before, and I'm not sure that I will have again. And that is our guest tonight, John Wilder, is in this first 15. And in this first 15, he plays 2 parts. Wrong spot here. Let's go back to the beginning here. Okay. This is John at the mic, and he plays 2 parts in this show tonight. He plays Jump Jump, who is a mischievous 3-inch elf, and he also plays the boy Tim, who becomes his friend. Now, John is certainly better known for his radio appearances in programs like the Jack Benny program, where he was the leader of the Beavers, or on as Little Beaver, or on other programs. But as I say, tonight's role is unique to have our guest being part of the first 15. Jump Jump was the creation of the husband and wife writing team of Harry Hickox and Mary McConnell. Jump Jump's original purpose was to serve as a continuity figure in Hickox and McConnell's series of 65 vignettes of animated creature-based children's stories. They were syndicated for radio stations across the U.S. by the Harry S. Goodman Organization. The original series was entitled Jump Jump of Holiday House. Each episode, Jump Jump is told a story, fairy tale actually, by Mary Holiday, the mistress of Holiday House. The elf, being the youthful Wilder, was recorded at 33 1/3 RPMs and played back at 78. The success of the program got the attention of Samson R. Diamond. Diamond contacted the syndicator Goodman. It was Diamond's idea to create a physical image and visual persona for the character Jump Jump. Diamond contacted the syndicator and Jump Jump's creators, McConnell and Hickox, for 25 episodes of a children's adventure to lead up to the 1948 Christmas holiday. Thus was born the story of Jump Jump and the Ice Queen. So the image of Jump Jump was created, and Jump Jump characters, dolls, merchandise, displays, and marketing materials were produced to promote the serial as a Christmas adventure. As OTR fans, of course, were familiar with The Cinnamon Bear, the story from the late 30s, which was also a serialized Christmas adventure. The task of manufacturing the promotional items was given to the fledgling Mattel Toy Company, and we all know what happened with Mattel. The story begins with Tim. Tim lives in an orphanage. Tim's friends at the orphanage are worried that Santa will forget them. Tim leaves the orphanage to go to the North Pole to speak to Santa directly. On his way, Tim meets the elf Jump Jump, who takes him to Holiday House to meet Mary Holiday. Mary is also worried about Santa, as she has not heard anything from him. So Mary joins Tim and Jump Jump on the trip to the North Pole. Along the way, they are joined by a clown whose hair changes color to match his mood, a lazy lion who naps more than he is awake, and a poet who
You
is
hear it, or you want me to move it closer to you?
They get to the North Pole and learn from Santa that his reindeer have been stolen by the Ice Queen. The quest now becomes one of rescuing the reindeer from the Ice Queen. But to do so, they must find a way to break through the circle of blue fire that surrounds her palace. The first episode of Jump Jump and the Ice Queen aired on November 22nd, 1948, and the series ended on Christmas Eve. The cast of the shows consisted of 3 primary actors, each playing multiple parts. Our guest John Wilder played the orphan Tim. His pre-recorded lines as Jump Jump were incorporated seamlessly into the presentations. The other actors were Jump Jump's creators, Mary McConnell and Harry Hickox. The musical accompaniment was provided by Bob Mitchell and his Hammond organ. Mitchell was known for decades for playing the organ accompaniment of silent movies. In the episodes toward the end of the Ice Queen series, the voices of Mitchell's boy choir were added. The choir was featured in several movies, including the classic Bing Crosby, Going My Way. So here we have John Wilder as Tim in Jump Jump in an episode of Jump Jump and the Ice Queen from November 1948.
Hello there. I'm awfully glad to meet you. My name is Tim, and I want to tell you about a wonderful adventure I had with Jump Jump the elf. The elf was only 3 inches tall. Maybe you don't believe in elves, but you will when you've heard my story. I'm back. It's Tim again. Have you heard about Jump Jump and Mary Holiday who live in Holiday House? At Holiday House, every day is a holiday. Something like Christmas all the time. I know, because I've been to Holiday House, and I've seen Mary Holiday. She's awfully pretty. And I know Jump Jump, the little elf who jumps up and down, backwards and forwards and sideways, and who talks so funny and so fast that you can't understand him all the time. We saved Christmas, Jump Jump and I. We really did. And in just a minute, I'll tell you all about it. Let's see. It was just about this time of the year, getting close to Christmas time. I'd been talking to some of the other kids at the orphanage where I live. and we've been wondering whether Santa Claus would remember us. Billy, he's a friend of mine. He's a little fellow, only 4 years old. Well, Billy said maybe Santa Claus only cared about whole families, where there were mothers and fathers and lots of brothers and sisters and all. Maybe he wouldn't bother to stop at an orphanage. Billy was worried. I was kind of worried, too. All of us kids were. So when I went to bed that night, I couldn't go to sleep. I kept looking out the window at the Big Dipper and the North Star, and I kept thinking, if I could just follow the North Star, I bet I'd get to the North Pole before long, and I'd find Santa Claus, and I'd just ask him if he planned to visit everybody at Christmas. Then I could tell Billy. So I got up, dressed myself, and went downstairs. And out the back door. Golly, it was dark, but I kept my eye on that North Star and started off into the woods. It seemed I walked for hours and hours, and then I started to get sleepy. I got so sleepy, I just had to rest. So I took off my jacket, laid down, and covered myself with it. And then, just as I was getting comfortable, something tapped me on the knee. I thought maybe an acorn had fallen on my knee. Just then, something tapped me on my other knee. And then I heard the funniest noise. You know what it was? Elf talk. Real elf talk. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and then I rubbed my eyes again. Because right on my knee, jumping up and down like a little jumping bean, was a tiny little boy elf, not over 3 inches tall. And he was dressed in bright red pants, a candy-striped shirt, yellow shoes, and he had a pointed red cap. He never stopped jumping, and he didn't stop talking either, talking that funny elf talk of his. He was so funny that I laughed. And do you know what he did then? He laughed, too. And he jumped back and forth from one knee to the other until I was dizzy from watching him. He kept talking, too. I couldn't understand a word he said, no matter how I tried. And so I said to him, "I'm sorry, Elf, but I can't understand a word you're saying." And with that, he got quite red in the face till he looked like a cherry with arms and legs. And then he jumped onto my collar and started to tug at it, as if to pull me onto my feet. I stood up, and then he jumped right onto my right ear and gave it a pull. I started to rock to the right, which pleased him, for he laughed, and he sounded so jolly that I laughed too. Well, he guided me along, jumping from ear to ear, and as I walked along, he sang the gayest little song. Before long, we came to a garden gate, and there stood a house just like a picture in a storybook. It had a peaked roof, diamond pane windows, and a bright red door. The elf tugged my ear, so I unlatched the garden gate, and we went up the garden path to the door. He tried to get me to open the door, but when I wouldn't, he jumped onto the door knocker and swung back and forth on it. Then we heard someone calling it to us from behind the door.
Jump, Jump? Oh, Jump, Jump, is that you? All right. All right. Just a second, I'll open the door.
Well, I wanted to run then, but the elf grabbed my ear so hard that instead I said, "Ouch!" Standing in the open door was a very pretty young lady with golden hair, and she was smiling down at us.
Well, there you are, Jump, Jump. Oh, and you've brought a new friend. Hello. Won't you both come in? I'm Mary Holiday.
And that little elf jumped right to Mary Holiday's shoulder. and we all went in. The inside of the house was wonderful. There were heart-shaped picture frames on all the walls with golden arrows through them. Over the mantel were tall green hats with shamrocks and clay pipes. On the sofa, there were red, white, and blue sofa pillows shaped like 4th of July firecrackers. The table in the corner of the room was set for a birthday party. And as we walked in, an Easter bunny scampered out of the kitchen door with a basket of colored eggs. In a minute, it seemed like, I was sitting in front of the fire, and Jump Jump was lying on his stomach in the palm of Mary Holliday's hand, talking to her 10 to the dozen. But to my surprise, she seemed to understand every word he'd said.
But tell me, Jump Jump, who is this you've brought to Holiday House?
My name is Tim.
How do you do, Tim? I hope you'll pardon Jump Jump for not introducing us. Sometimes he quite forgets his manners.
Yes, ma'am.
But he's so small and so busy jumping up and down. And besides, he talks much too fast to make proper introductions.
Tim. His name is Tim. Mary Holiday.
I know.
Name is Tim. He talks so I can understand him.
Well, of course, he can talk slowly if he tries. But he forgets, and he talks fast when he's excited. It would be much better if he talked slowly all the time. Tim, Jump Jump and I are very happy to welcome you to Holiday House.
Thank you, Mary Holiday. Give my friend Tim some pie, Mary Holiday. Give him some pie.
Jump Jump thinks you might like a piece of pie. Would you, Tim, with a glass of milk?
Thank you. It would be very nice. I want some pie, too. I want some pie, too, Mary Holiday.
Oh, you want some pie, too,
Please.
You're welcome.
Jump Jump sat on the table and had his pie on a penny. I had to laugh, for he jumped about so much that I had my pie eaten long before he'd finished his tiny little piece. Mary Holiday didn't eat any pie at all. She kept looking out the window and glancing at the telephone, as if she were waiting for someone. Every time she looked at me, she smiled, but still, I thought maybe I should thank her for my pie and milk and go on my way. But just as I started to, what do you think? I looked over at Jump Jump, who had just finished off the last crumb, and he was sound asleep. Mary Holiday picked him up, just so carefully, and said,
Oh, what a tired little elf. Well, while I put him in his bed, you must tell me all about yourself, Tim.
I live in an orphanage, Mary Holiday.
You do?
Yes, and Billy, a friend of mine, who's only 4 years old, he's worried.
Worried?
Yes, ma'am. He thinks maybe Santa Claus won't come to see us at all.
Oh, I see.
So I thought, Mary Holiday, if I followed the North Star, maybe I'd find Santa Claus, and then I'd ask him, and then I could tell Billy not to worry anymore.
Oh, yes. You know, Tim, I'm worried, too.
Are you afraid Santa Claus won't come to see you at Holiday House?
Yes, because... Well, maybe. Jump, Jump. Oh, that's the door knocker, Tim. Maybe that's a message from Santa Claus now.
Greetings, Mary Holiday.
Oh, it's you, Archie Pogley the clown. Come in, Archie Pogley, come in.
I came to wish you, Mary Holiday, a merry holiday. Oh, it is a holiday, isn't it?
Oh, yes, of course it's a holiday. You didn't happen to bring a message from the North Pole?
At this hour? Or what hour is it? It is an hour, isn't it?
Yes, of course. It's a late hour.
Well, you haven't heard from Santa Claus at this late hour?
No, I haven't. And I'm so worried, Archie Pogley. This has never happened before. Oh, excuse me, Tim. This is Archie Pogley, the circus clown.
I'm a jolly old clown, and I never do frown, and I make little children laugh with glee. I never do whine, because I haven't got time. I'm a jolly old clown, as you can see.
And what a funny clown he was, dressed in green pants, a yellow shirt, and a red hat with a feather in it. And his hair was bright pink. I'm afraid I stared at his pink hair, for he said...
As a famous man once said, pleased to meet you. You like my pink hair?
Well, yes, I do.
Well, as you can see, I'm feeling in the pink today.
Oh, Archie Pugley, you are silly.
For I'm a jolly old clown. I never do frown. I make little... Oh, but you're frowning, Mary Holiday.
Oh, I'm sorry, Archie Pugley. Well, it's just that I'm so concerned about Santa Claus.
And then Mary Holiday told Archie Pugley about me and the other children at the orphanage being worried about Christmas, too. I wanted to stay awake and hear what Archie Pugley might suggest about our going to the North Pole. But I was getting sleepier and sleepier again. I tried to stay awake, but... Suddenly I was asleep, right in my chair. However, the next day I was to find out why Mary Holiday was so worried. And it had to do with my trip to the North Pole, too. Tomorrow, if you'll meet me here at the same time, I'll tell you what happened next morning when I woke up.
Okay, so that's the first episode of Jump Jump and the Ice Queen. And in addition to that series, then there were several other Jump Jump series, all featuring the Hickox and McConnell and our guest John Wilder. So as I say, a little preseason, but I just thought it was a good episode to play for tonight. And again, a unique experience to have the guest be the participant, the actor in the first 15.
I want to ask Tim what happens next. I can't wait.
Well, maybe John can tell you.
Thank you very much, Frank. That was just delightful. And I also want to know what happens next. So I'm not sure I don't see John Wilder's name on our list of participants unless I'm sorry. Oh, that's John Reiser, but
Yeah,
I'm looking
John,
Wilder.
yeah, Walden told me that he will arrive about 8 o'clock, so he'll be here by the time we finish our quiz.
Oh, okay, great. Got it. That's wonderful. Perfect timing then. So without further ado, I will make our own Sally Stevens, the quiz mistress. I will make her a co-host. Sally, you have co-hosting privileges, so the floor is yours, or ceiling, as the case may be.
I was muted.
Sally, did you finish that drink, or are you into your next one? Okay.
Same one. All right. Unfortunately, I am digital today. So I am pulling up here we go. All right. See the poll. Very good. All right. End of the quarter. Time for school, children. You think that it's a Friday, we don't get to have class. That's not the case. Test today. Oh, you didn't prepare? Well, that's not my problem. John was prepared. I see he's a good student. Who else is John Reiser's prepared. Who else was prepared today? Oh, Wendy's prepared. Very good. This is your chance to get your paper and your pencils or your pens, if you so choose. No cheating. It is time for our quiz, courtesy of Frank Morgan. And how
You want to launch the poll?
I will, momentarily.
Sorry.
Please raise your hand next time, Wendy.
Yeah, teach.
Thank you. I will read the questions and I will read the answers 2 times so that you can hear it. You may answer on the poll. You may answer on your paper. We will go over the answers after the main program. This week, lovely, is Let's Hear It for Teacher Appreciation Week. Let's hear it. Yay! Oh, so lovely, so lovely.
Boo, boo.
I think we might have to mute him.
We will be speaking after class about detention.
Yes, teacher.
Launching pole. Number 1. Miss Brooks often has to play second fiddle to Mr. Boynton's pet frog. What is the frog's name? A. O'Doobell. B. McDougal. C. O'Donnell. D. McConnell. What is Mr. Boynton's pet frog's name? O'Doobell. McDougal. O'Donnell. McConnell. Number 2. Archie Andrews and pals attended what high school? A. Uniondale. B. Madison. C. Riverdale. D. Oakview. Archie Andrews and pals attended what high school? Number 3. There are all types of teachers. Leroy Forrester took lessons from a piano teacher. What was her name? A. Miss Piper. B. Miss Draper. C. Mrs. Munson. D. Mrs. Gates. What was the name of the piano teacher? Number 4. On Life with Luigi, Luigi attends night school to work on his English. What is the name of his teacher? A. Miss Spelling. B. Miss Taken. C. Miss Deeds. D. Miss Spalding. What is the name of the English teacher? Number 5. Gildersleeve and Judge Hooker both sought the attention of the new dance teacher in town. What was her name? A. Miss Tanzer. B. Miss Ballerina. C. Miss Danseuse. D. Miss Del Rey. What was the name of the new dance teacher? Number 6. Teachers have been known to play episodes of this old-time radio program while giving lessons in American history. Which one? A. Words at War. B. The March of Time. C. You Are There. D. History and beyond. Teachers have been known to play episodes of this program while giving lessons in American history. Which one? Number 7. This actor was fluent in German and French and occasionally played a French teacher on the radio. Who was it? A. Marlene Dietrich. B. Adolf Menru. We're gonna go with it. C. Ingrid Bergman. D. Gerald Moore. Moore? I'm Friday. And I was worried about BB. Number 8. The Quiz Kids brought together the best of the best intellectually gifted youngsters. But who was the man who rang the class bell and asked the questions? A. Art Linkletter. B. Joe Kelly. C. Art Carney. D. Don McNeil. Who asked the questions on the Quiz Kids? Number 9. Frank Merriwell and his friends attended Yale on NBC for the 3 months in the spring of 1934 and 3 years beginning in 1946. Who portrayed the intelligent and athletic Frank during the later incarnation? A. Les Tremaine. B. Stacey Harris. C. Richard Crenna. D. Lawson Zerb. Who portrayed the intelligent and athletic Frank in the later incarnation? Number 10. Ronald Coleman and Benita Hume robots don't sneeze. Number 10. Ronald Coleman and Benita Hume gave life to radio's Ivy College as its president and his wife. What were the given names of the halls? A. Philip and Andrea. B. William and Vicky. C. Wallace and Vera. D. Vincent and Martha. What were the given names of the halls? Okay. All right, I will leave the poll open while our program is running, so you may finish, and we will go over the answers. No changing your answers. Submitted. It's the end of the quarter. We can't go back. No extra credit today.
Thank you very much, Miss Stevens. I think we found the next B. Benaderet for future quizzes. So let's see. Are we good to go now with Walden?
Yep, I believe we are. Yep.
Yeah, John Wilder, I see him on here. That is wonderful. So I will turn things over to Frank. Will Mr. Wilder, will you require access to screens and stuff like that, or?
I see you, and you are
the president, Wendy. Yeah.
I'm Wendy Wilmer, the president.
Hey, Wendy, how are you?
I am well. How are you tonight? It's lovely to have you here. We're truly honored.
John might show some pictures. I know you might have some pictures handy in your archives. So
didn't pull any up. Well,
you didn't? Okay.
No, I don't.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so we don't need to. Well, if you decide you do, I can make you a co-host. So that would be good. And I do recognize your face from many films.
It's been a little worse for wear, but
yeah, it looks pretty darn good to me. So, Frank, did you want to say anything by way of introduction, or shall we just throw the ball to Walden? And
well, just real quickly, I hope that everyone had the opportunity to read John's bio. You know, it would take the rest of the evening if I were to try and go through that. So we'll just throw it to Walden and let him go through the Q&A with John. And
I looked at it, Frank, and it had to be 3 other guys.
Very impressive.
Well, you have a good agent then who prepares that for you, John, because it's totally impressive. And you know, I was happy to share it with our members. I sent it out with the notice of the meeting so that everybody would have a chance to take a look at it. And actually, you're going to find that a question or two was generated from it that we'll get to later. So I'm going to toss it over to Walden and thank Walden for arranging you to be here tonight. And thank you for being here tonight. And Walden, take it away.
Thank you, Frank. I have to admit, John and I are cousins, so you know, it's helped the whole family ties, so that helps. We share the same ancestor, Governor Bradford on the Mayflower, so that we always, over the years, always refer to each other as cousins. So always very fun. Just for those of you who haven't read John's bio, in the radio days, he was Johnny McGovern and had running roles on 15 radio series. So we'll probably never touch TV tonight in the hour that we have. But John, how are you doing, first of all? How's everything in Santa Barbara?
Excuse me, Walden, but if I hit the share screen, are we okay the way I'm set up here? I can see Frank and Wendy and Edgar, and Sally isn't there, and Walden. Is there anything else I should have on screen here?
I think you're good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think you're good.
All right.
Well, first, right off the bat, we had questions, John. We had questions right off the bat asking, how in the world did you get started? That was the first question that came out in the email box to Frank.
Okay. Moved from Tacoma, Washington to California when I was 7. I was taught to read phonetically up in Washington, came to California and they were teaching sight reading. So they skipped me ahead in school and my folks took me down to the old Geller workshop in Hollywood. I think Tommy mentioned that he started there too. And I did a play, Lillian Hellman play Watch on the Rhine, directed by Marlene Dietrich's daughter, Maria Manton was her name at the time. She later was known as Maria Rivera. But she said, my God, this boy can read so well, you should take him into radio for an audition. I went into CBS, did a general audition, and 3 days later, he got the first job and just, I mean, never stopped working till my voice started to change and I became old enough to say, I don't want to do this anymore. But in that period of time, just an awful lot of radio.
The Watch of the Rhine was a famous movie. Did the play happen about the same time, John, around 1943 or so, roughly?
I suspect, Walden, that the movie came out after the play.
Okay.
Because she was, quite a well-known dramatist.
Yeah. You remember your first radio show? Was it a local show in LA or was it coast to coast?
No, it was, I think, coast to coast, and I can see it. It might have been an Agnes Moorehead show. It might have been a Lux. What I remember most about it is that Gloria McMillan and her mother were seated in the audience and they came up on stage afterwards to introduce themselves, and that created a lifelong friendship, as you know.
Yeah, could have been Mayor of the Town or something like that with Agnes. You never.
No, it was an audience show. I don't think Mayor of the Town was an audience show.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably at CBS because that's where I did the first audition. Dunno.
Oh, let's walk through some of the famous radio shows. You have some wonderful stories about Jack Benny. What's some of your memories of working on the Jack Benny radio show?
My favorite memory of Jack is, well, the first show I did with a fellow named Jerry Farber, and I don't believe he had used juveniles on the show before. Maybe Don Bender might have done one, but anyway, the show was about him and Mary having gone to Catalina on a vacation on a cruise ship that docked in the harbor. And it's funny, Jack is saying to Mary, look at those boys. What are they doing diving off that cliff into the water? Oh my, they're diving for silver dollars. So Jerry and I are these two kids diving for silver dollars, and all of a sudden there's a splash in the water and Jack Benny is in the water, and Jerry Farber said, where's that old guy? And I said something like, shoot, nuts. I used to know that line by heart. Anyway, whatever my response was, Jack did his, look at the camera, look at the audience for about a minute and a half. People just rolled in the audience, and he said, we got to have these kids on again. Jerry and I did a few more, and then he formed a little club called the Beverly Hills Beavers. And I played a character named Joey. I was the president, and Jack, of course, was the treasurer. So he could be with them, he could be with the money. I mean, they were really funny writers. And what I loved about it was, it was all good, clean humor. And I never heard any profanity from him or any of the guys in the band. He also had me work with him on a skit that he did with Frankie Remley and other musicians. Wayne Songer was a clarinet player. Charlie Bagby played accordion. He was the piano player for Phil Harris's orchestra. Sammy Weiss played drums, and we're all dressed as hillbillies. And Sammy had this drum kit, which was like an orange crate on a stand, and Jack, of course, played fiddle. And it was what's called a deadpan act. And Jack said, "Now, Johnny, it's a deadpan act. That means you cannot smile, you cannot laugh." He said, "We're going to do some funny stuff here, and these people in the audience are going to be laughing like crazy. Don't crack a smile." Okay. I was to sing "You Are My Sunshine" as the solo singer. He introduced all of us with names of famous criminals and stuff, and he introduced me as Sonny Wisecarver, who at that time was a Lothario that ran off with older women. Anyway, we walk on stage in our hillbilly outfits. Jack had a straw boater on and red underwear and with blue overalls, strap hanging off one shoulder. And we walk on stage, and we're not to discover the audience until he does. So we're all looking around, looking into the lights, and then he freezes, and we look at him, and he's staring at the audience, and we all look like we're terrified of the audience. Then he begins to talk, and he could play that fiddle. I mean, jokes about him playing violin, but he could really make that thing sing. And in the middle of one of the tunes, I was standing there. I was 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Now, I guess I was 10 through 14. I worked this skit with him as well as the radio show. And I stood perfectly deadpan until somebody, I think this clarinet player, hit a really hot lick, and Jack came in with a fiddle, and I did snap my fingers, come to life, big kick, and then go right back to deadpan. And it was I don't know, it was awfully hard to stay deadpan, especially when Jack was going and the musicians behind me are all laughing and hiding their heads, and I'm standing there not cracking a smile because that's what I was told to do. Oh, I should let me elaborate on that a little bit too. While doing that, because this is really cool, a great insight into Jack. In 1949, the spring of 1949, we were going up to perform a benefit in San Francisco. Can't remember the name of it. Oh, anyway, San Francisco benefit, going to do the Beverly Hills Hillbillies. And I had written to Lou Boudreau, the player manager of the Cleveland Indians, because the Cleveland Indians were coming into Burbank, where I lived, to play the St. Louis Browns in an exhibition game. And I wrote to him along with my buddy and asked if they needed bat boys, could we bat boy for them? These are the world champions, and we're whatever, 12. Wrote back and said, yes, meet us at the ballpark in uniforms. So we were there. We got the bat boy for the Cleveland Indians. Great thrill. And after the game, I said to Mr. Boudreau, I said, Mr. Boudreau, you're going to play a doubleheader in, I think, Oakland next weekend, and I'm going to be in San Francisco performing with Jack Benny. And if he will let me come, could I bat boy for you for those games? And they said, sure thing, Johnny. So we get to San Francisco, and I said, Mr. Benny, explained to him, said Mr. Boudreau said could meet him there. Would it be all right if I skipped dress rehearsal tomorrow? I mean, we'd done this skit so many times. And he looked at me, and I thought, oh my God, I really did the wrong thing here. And he said, tell you what, Johnny, we'll all skip dress rehearsal and go to the ball game. And he did. He got a box seat. My dad sat with him and the members of the band while the Cleveland Indians were playing the Oakland Acorns, it would have been. I think it could have been the San Francisco Seals too, but I think it was in Oakland. But just a terrific guy. I remember sitting in the writer's room between rehearsals, and they would go over the script and make line changes and improvements. And one of the writers suggested something, and Jack stopped and he said, "No, we don't drop our pants to get a laugh." So that was Benny.
You know, you played Jack as a beaver when the beaver did the Jack Benny show at the cast members. Did that make you nervous? You know, trying to mimic Jack's style in those two broadcasts, or did Jack work with you ahead of time on that?
A little bit, but you know, I listened to a recording recently. I said that wasn't very good, but he liked it. My mom said when she was there, when they were talking about doing a show with the kids playing the adults, and somebody asked him, "Well, who's going to play you, Jack?" And he said, "Well, Johnny, of course." I mean, he really liked me. Used to get great presents from him. You know, he's such a cheapskate in his persona, but I mean, I got beautiful sweaters from him, and terrific guy. And Walden knows that after I quit doing that skit, our friend Beverly Washburn took it over. So she and I share that experience with Jack Benny.
Right. What's your memory of the Abbott and Costello Saturday morning show?
A lot of fun. Both terrific guys. They insisted that I call them Uncle Bud and Uncle Lou. I'm still in touch with Carol and Patty, two of his daughters. His one daughter, his second daughter died, as did his infant son, died in the swimming pool. But Lou especially was just so darn nice and so lovable. And another benefit that I was doing with Jack, we went to Fairfield Air Force Base in Sacramento, and Bud and Lou were on the bill also. And Lou came to me just before the show started, and he said, "Johnny," he said, "Uncle Bud is really sick. Could you help me out?" And I said, "Sure." I was 12, I think. He said, "You've heard us do Who's on First a lot of times." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Could you do it with me?" I said, "Oh, no, no. He says, "Well, we won't do the whole thing. Let me write out a shorthand version here and let's go over it." So he sat down at his dressing table in his dressing room and scribbled out a shorthand version of Who's on First. And I got to do Who's on First with Lou Costello. And when we got home, we got off the airplane. He came to me and my dad and he said, "Johnny, I want to get you something." I said, "You don't need to get me anything, Uncle Lou." And he said, I want to get you something. How about a bike? You have a bike?" I said, "Yes, sir, I have a bike." "How about a TV set? Could your parents use a new color TV set?" I said, "No, sir, thank you very much." And so I refused everything. And the next week, a pedigreed black Cocker Spaniel arrived in a crate to the house. He was giving me a dog whom I named Inky because he was so black. Two terrific guys. And I kicked myself from time to time because Bud died in the motion picture home, and I didn't think to go see him. I'm sure now that I'm this age, I realize how nice it is to see people from your past. And it would have been a good thing if I'd gone and seen him, and I'm really sorry I didn't. But terrific guys. Patty had her 13th birthday while we were doing the show, and he asked me to be her date for her birthday party. And in his backyard, he put up a big tent. It must have been, I don't know, 100 feet by 50 feet or something. White poles, white netting, and white balloons up at the ceiling. And that was her 13th birthday party. And I remember it because I had to go learn to take dance lessons so I could dance with her. That's Abbott Costello.
Sure. How about the Great Gildersleeve Show?
Oh God, that was fun. I played a character called Craig Bullard, who was the next door neighbor and a brat. And my line every hello, did I do something or is that?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, I see a green dot with a phone on it. The line that I had every week was wah, because I would do something and Gildersleeve would say no, I suppose, and I would cry, this loud cry. And a guy who became a good friend of mine, who was a little older than me, had done it before me. His name was Tommy Bernard. I don't know if did you ever get a hold of Tommy Bernard, Walden?
Never did. I tried. Yeah, I guess he wound up working for Boeing, and
yes.
I found he passed away about 4 years ago, but I tried as best I could to hunt him down. Yeah.
Would love to see him. He was a good guy's guy. I played a lot of baseball in the Valley, and he came out a couple times and played with our team. Just really nice guy, and he did a lot of work before me. Tommy Bernard and Tommy Cook and Dick Davis and Conrad Binion.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was your impression of Hal Perry?
Oh, he was terrific. And he knew that I loved baseball and had a really good softball team. And he got a softball team together of all the crew on Great Gildersleeve. And we played a few games against my kids, against him and Andy White and who else wrote it. Radio was great. I don't know. Maybe it has to do with people didn't have to be in front of a camera and, be primp and pompous. They were all really nice people.
Did you have some favorite people, some of the second bananas, third bananas that, that really were good guys to you? Anybody stands out?
Oh, lots of them. Frank Gerstle, Ira Grossell, who became Jeff Chandler. Virginia Gregg must have played my mother 50 times. Larry Dobkin, Jerry Hausner, who did Baby Cries and Dog Barks and stuff like that. Hans, help me.
Hans Connery.
Hans Connery. On the comedy shows, Conrad, well, you probably all know his persona, that big voice and everything. And he always wore one bright red sock and one bright green sock. And when he would deliver a laugh line, he'd hike up his pants, and that the audience would really laugh at what he was doing physically as much as the joke itself. I could John Daner. I could probably live Vic Perrin, Eddie Firestone Jr., Billy Idelson. I could probably name 100 or 200 actors, actresses. Gigi Pearson played my mother a lot. She was, I think she was married to Frank Lovejoy, who was another great guy. Elliot Lewis, Kathy Lewis. Gosh, just a lot of wonderful actors. I think, of course, of Martha Wentworth, who played Auntie Duchess to Little Beaver on the Red Ryder show, and Horace Murphy, who played Buckskin Blodgett. And I was with them 3 days a week for, I think, a year, and then 2 days a week after that I think I did that for 4.5 years, till my voice was I was really reaching to keep it where it was. And Sammy Ogg came in and I helped him learn how to do that. And he did it for about 6 months, and then the show went off the air. But the first Little Beaver, by the way, was Lorene Tuttle for one show. And then Tommy took it over and did it. And then Henry Blair followed Tommy, and then I followed Henry. And I know Frank Braceve said he played, I suspect he subbed for Tommy or Henry.
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, Ann Whitfield did one show too when they couldn't find any kids.
I think she said that. Yes. Yeah, maybe between Henry and me, probably.
Yeah. My
And-
favorite story is when Tommy got locked in the bathroom and Mercedes McCambridge had to cover for him with the opening.
Oh,
So
gosh.
yeah.
The
Always a good.
greatest cover that I ever saw. I was doing Pinocchio on Academy Award Playhouse, I guess it was called, or theater.
Mhm.
And Dink Trout, who was a little man with a high voice, was playing Jiminy Cricket. And Ed Max, who was a big man with a voice that came from his ankles, was playing Monstro the Whale. A lot of things happened on this show. At one point, Dink went to sleep. He wasn't at the mic, and Ed Max tried to sound like Dink Trout to deliver this line from Jiminy Cricket, and it was pretty darn funny. Also during the show, the lights went out in the studio. We were totally in the dark, and actors were lighting their Zippos and striking matches and holding them over. We were all huddled around one mic. I had a box, of course. And then at another point in the show, I dropped my script, and maybe panicking, but I knew my dialogue pretty well by then, so I just went through with the scene. Nobody noticed anything. A fellow named D. Engelbach directed that and produced that show. And I remember when the lights came back on, we finished the show, and he charged out of the booth, the big glass booth, down the stairs. He just grabbed me and he squeezed me like he's going to squeeze all the life out of me. But you can imagine being a director and having all those things go wrong, and you got a 9-10-year-old kid carrying the ball for you. So I thought, gee, why did he squeeze me like that? But as an adult and a director, I realized, whoa, he was really happy I kept my cool.
Oh, there's a famous story. I don't know if it's true, but it's a great story about D. Engelbart at the time. I guess he was through hard cues. And one time he threw a cue, he hit a finger against the glass and broke his finger. That's the story.
That could have happened. It was, I think, because nobody was filming people. They weren't so self-conscious. And boy, the performances. On Lux, I think I did 21 Lux radio theaters. The movie actors would come in and they were used to, learning their lines and doing take after take after take. A line, please, fluffing things. And the radio actors, it was live then. We didn't have tape at the time. We did a live broadcast to the East Coast and then a live broadcast to the West Coast. And you just kept it going. The show must go on. And radio actors were carrying film actors through scenes where they would screw up, and they didn't have the same energy that radio required always either.
Can you tell the story about Anchor Away with Frank Sinatra and Gene Kelly? That's a great story.
Should I?
Yeah.
Well, we rehearsed on Friday, I believe, and then had Saturday off, if I'm remembering this correctly. And then we came back on Sunday and we did rehearsal for effects, and then a dress rehearsal, and then break, and then live to the East, live to the West. And Mr. Sinatra did not show up for Friday's rehearsals. He did not show up until dress rehearsal. And Gene Kelly took him aside and he made him walk. There were like, I don't know, maybe I'm going to say 15 to 20 people in the cast. He made him walk down the row of chair. He had us all sit down, and Sinatra had to apologize to each one of us for missing those rehearsals because of Gene Kelly. I don't know what kind of guy Sinatra was, but I know what kind of guy Kelly was. And I'd rather see a movie with Gene Kelly right now than anything that's being made, actually.
He was definitely a talent. I've been trying to get over daughter in Michigan. So yeah, it's pretty amazing legacy he led. We're gonna, John and I are gonna ask a couple more questions, then we're gonna open up to the audience. So everybody just get ready for your questions for John. But looking, John, any memories of the Halls of Ivy? I mean, I love that show, Ronald Coleman and Benita. Any memories of working with them?
I don't. I remember more that my sister did it and listening to her.
Yeah.
I still have a photograph of her standing on a box with her script and Ronald Coleman beside her. I don't know. I don't.
How about Edgar Bergen and Troy McCarthy?
Oh yeah, that was that was fun. My character was a snooty little kid called Skylar Van Snoot, and he was Charlie's buddy, of course. And what I remember most about that show and Bergen and McCarthy was a little dummy that he had, a little old maid called Effie Clinker, and he used her in the warm-ups for the show. And I remember one joke she told, or one joke they did. Effie said, I won't try to do her voice. Did I tell you that a man broke into my house the other day and I found him under the bed? Well, Effie, that's terrible. What, did you call the police? And she said, no, I found him and he's mine.
An early morning Saturday morning show with Smiling Ed and Buster Brown Gang. What's your memories of that?
Your Magic Twanger Froggy.
Yeah.
Well, I played a character called Kula in The Genie of the Jug, and Lou Merrill played the genie. I don't remember much except I think for sometimes I was doing that show, and I think Abbott Costello we were Saturday mornings, Buster Brown was Saturday mornings. I think I remember going from one studio to the other to do one show after the other. I don't remember. With Abbott and Costello Kids Show, I did the warm up with the audience that Don Wilson would do for the Benny Show, and Hy Averback did for the Bob Hope Show, and so I was the MC. So I did that and go out in the audience and bring kids up onto the stage to participate in stuff that Lou and Bud had planned. A fellow named Eddie Foreman produced it, and a fellow named Harfield Whedon directed it. And at the end of every broadcast, I would say, signing out from Hollywood, whatever. The Abbott and Costello Kids Show is written and produced by Eddie Foreman and directed by Harfield Whedon. And I'd hit, and Eddie Foreman came up to me once and he said, Johnny, could you kind of give a little more emphasis to my name?
You know, announcers made a great living doing warm-up in radio. Did they work with you on an outline how to do a warm-up, John? How did they do that for you for the Abbott and Costello show?
Send me out to tell what the show was about, who was going to be on it, and you know, this means if you see the director in the booth doing this, it's telling us to speed up, and if he's doing this, it's telling us to stretch it. And if he does this, you know just exactly what it means. That would be on the nose, but it's supposed to be it's stinky. I can't hear anybody, so
that's okay. That's
talking
okay.
Vacuum here.
How about Jimmy Durante? What about that? Any memories of Jimmy?
Oh, I do remember him very well. And good night, Mrs. Calabash, wherever you are, you know. I still listen to his record. I think he was a great singer. Well, he was a Broadway star, but I love his attack on songs. I'll Be Seeing You and Make Somebody Happy. But he was, you know, I'm a little kid, and he's got like golf slacks, baggy slacks, and always had a cardigan sweater on. He had that hat, you know, so jovial, always laughing at everybody else and having a good time, as far as I could tell.
I always heard he was one of the kindest persons there was in show business. He was so kind to so many people.
Well, he was really pleasant, you know. Hey kid, how you doing? You know.
I remember Candy Candino told a story to Spurvac that he used to drive Jimmy to the show, and his car broke down. So Jimmy felt so bad, he bought Candy a Cadillac.
How
You
nice.
know, it was a typical thing that Jimmy would do.
It just reminded me, Candy Candido's son, Candy Candido must have lived in Burbank, because his son and I became friends in junior high school, I think. Don't remember his name even, but I do remember him. I can see him.
Okay, let's open it up to the audience. So Wendy and Frank, you want to see if anybody will have questions? I bet Frank got a few. So let's open it up to our audience at the moment.
Yeah, I have a question, if I may.
Animal, mineral, or vegetable? What do we?
Well, on Gildersleeve playing Craig Bullard, your uncle was Gail Gordon.
Yes.
And what can you tell us about him and how he interacted with the cast members? His career went from the 30s into movies, or television into the 70s. What was he like to work with?
Another really nice guy, and of course I remember him more from Our Miss Brooks, actually.
Okay.
But just a genuinely nice guy, and the way they delivered their dialogue on radio was pretty special. A little too much for film, but I have nothing. He's not Frank Sinatra. I love Sinatra singing, but oh my, a little full of himself at the time.
I mean, really, you've given us, a list of the luminaries of radio that you performed with. It's remarkable, and I've just enjoyed every minute hearing you talk about these different actors, and also to find that they were human and not, today I have the impression that a lot of today's performers are just, think that they're so much different than everybody else, so much better than everybody else. And I get the impression that these people were human beings that enjoyed what they did and enjoyed being with each other.
They were working actors. I mean, they were all dramatically trained or comedically trained. June Foray, as you're talking about, I mean, she was terrific, and she wasn't much bigger than me when I was a kid, and then she was also on the Buster Brown show. That's where I worked with her mostly. But yes, and I don't know. I think it's the visuals. I think it's the visuals. I certainly have met a lot of television and film actors, worked with them, are really stuck on themselves, and don't remember anybody in radio not being just a regular person. Come in and, Hal March and Bob Sweeney and Mary Jane Croft and Bea Benaderet and Sarah Berner, just people. Dick Crenna, Louise Erickson. I don't remember anybody in radio being conceited in any way.
Last before I let everybody else go, because that show on Jack Benny that you did where the Beavers played the cast members, I've heard that so many times, laughed, and I'll tell you what, you kids were terrific. Maybe you don't think so looking back at it, but as someone who listened to it and enjoyed it, that was one of my favorite episodes on Jack Benny, to hear you.
Thank you, Frank.
Youngsters doing that.
That was fun. My sister, of course, played Mary, and created a lifelong friendship with Stuffy Singer off of that show. It was fun, and just when I listened to it, I thought, oh my goodness, I'd like to go back and direct me.
I'm sure other people have some questions, John, so I'm going to mute myself and let them.
Before you go, Frank, any
Yes.
relation to the Frank Morgan?
No, no,
Okay.
no, I get that, but of course, that wasn't his real name anyhow.
Oh, wasn't it?
So, no, that was his stage name. So, no relationship.
Okay, I met Billy Wilder. I was going to go to United Artists almost put a studio together for television. They wanted me to come over and do dramatic programming for them. And Billy Wilder was going to be there as a consultant. And he said, "Kid, it's really great to meet you." And I said, "Well, Mr. Wilder, I have to confess, it isn't my family name. My family name is McGovern." And I changed it because there was another John Wilder in Actors Equity, and I couldn't do stage work with that name, and took another name, which I've always regretted. But I said, "I understand you changed your name too." He said, "No, I'm a Wilder." He said, "But with your credits, you're a Wilder too, kid." So that was pretty nice. I see a couple of faces there.
Yeah.
Go on.
So who do we have with hands raised? We've got Edgar, but I think there was in chat before Edgar got his hand up. George D had a question. So if we can have George D, can you ask your question first, and then we'll go to Edgar?
Okay, thank you. Couple of things I'm going to ask. First of all, thank you so much for coming here to be with us.
Oh, my pleasure.
It's a great honor to have you, and we love all the memories you're sharing with us. And you've been a very fortunate person. There's a lot of questions about Lou Costello not being the same after his son passed. As you reflect on it now, later on, were there things that might have you noticed going on with him?
Oh, no, not at all. His little boy died before I met him. He had an oil painting over the mantle in his home in Studio City. I used to go there after the show. I'd go over there with Anna Marie Slaughter, who was the vocalist, great singer, and run movies. Lou had a little theater, I would say about maybe 8 seats, and a projection booth behind it, and he would run films for us. No, I certainly, I didn't know him before his son died, but my mom said, I think she thought one of the reasons he liked me so much, because he's always squeezing me and everything. She said, he lost a little boy, and I think he enjoys having you around. But I don't think so. I could ask Patty for you sometime, George, because I still talk to her regularly. I've never touched on that subject.
Who was most surprisingly different in real life than they were that you expected them to be?
Ooh, I don't know that I had expectations, George. I know one thing that surprised me was I did the Loretta Young show as a young actor, the television show, and we rehearsed and everything, and she looked kind of like my mother. I mean, she was a middle-aged woman. She didn't have makeup on or anything. And then when we went on the set, she came out and she had big eyelashes, her eyes big. She looked totally different. I wasn't sure it was her for a moment. That surprised me. But personality-wise, I'd be hard-pressed to think of anybody. I mean, if you're listening to, say, Red Ryder, and you're thinking of the big red-headed cowboy, probably 6'2", 6'3", and everything. The fellow I worked with was a man named Brooke Temple, who was probably about 5'8", 5'9", and bald. So, and he had a great voice.
I think Yes, thank you, George, for your questions. Edgar, I think you're up next.
Yes, well, first I want to thank you for a most enjoyable presentation. And my first question is, have you written your book yet? And I think it's going to take volumes. And I hope you're doing it, or even an audio remembrance.
Thank you, Edgar. My family, of course, wants me to. I'll be 87 in about 30 days.
You don't look it.
Well, thank you. I do to me. But my wife, I began to write, I think I wrote 50, 60 pages, and I put it aside because I'm working on something that I hope will be a great historical novel. And I asked her to look at it, and she said, I didn't know it'd be this good. But I should do that because I do have good recall of things that are long gone, and many of the people that I remember so well are long gone because they were, 30 to 60, and I was 9, 10, 11, 12. So thank you for that, Edgar. I may try to do a little more work on that.
Well, you'll make them immortal, and you will be immortal.
Well, I always think, come on, who's interested in my life? I like to read biographies of people who have done something great for the world. And Maureen Reagan, Ronald Reagan's daughter, was a friend of mine. She was a technical advisor on a teenage movie that I did, and she was the dance coach for us, and we became really good friends. And we used to correspond when she was going to girls' school back east. And she would always tell me, how great it was to be in showbiz. And I'd say, no, I'd like to be doing something important. I want to, I'm probably going to go to law school and see if I can. And she'd always argue about how important entertainment was. And it didn't dawn on me until much later that, yeah, we need Abbott and Costello. We need Jack Benny. I'm not sure we need a lot of the dramas that are on now. I find that the anti-hero has become the hero, and supposedly there was a series called Breaking Bad, which everybody in the industry says, oh, best series of all time. I began to watch it and I thought, I don't want to sit and root for a guy who's doing all those things. I get it that we're all glorious and wretched at the same time, but I don't want to spend my evenings watching that. I haven't watched Succession yet, which everybody raves about. And I watched the beginning of one episode, and I thought, hey, I wrote Peyton Place for 4.5 years, the same formula, except they have nasty people using the F-bomb every other, probably 50 times in an hour. So I'm not keen on a lot of stuff that's going on television today.
Well, I did want to ask you your experiences of writing and working with Larry McMurtry and producing A Return to Lonesome Dove. Do you have memories, and what was most rewarding and what was most challenging about doing that show?
Most challenging was definitely the president of CBS, Jeff Sagansky, called me up and he said, John, did you watch Lonesome Dove? And I said, I did. It was terrific. He said, well, I thought it was pretty slow, but yes, we got, we got decent numbers, and we're thinking about doing a sequel. And I will only do the sequel if you will write it and produce it. And I said, wow, let me think about that. And my agent, Bill Haber at CAA, said, never do a sequel. Don't do a sequel. Do your own stuff. And I said, Bill, nobody's making Westerns, and I love Westerns, and I think I could do a good job with it, and I'd rather spend my time working on that than anything else that I'm aware of at the moment. So I said yes. And a fellow named Robert Halmy was the financing producer, and a gal named Suzanne DePass was the executive producer with, she really ran the show on Lonesome Dove. And I was used to running things myself. I'm hands-on from idea through final cut. And so I said, this is how I work. And she said, we can work together. And so first thing I did, Edgar, was say, okay, how do I do a sequel here? What is there to build on? And what I thought really would work for me was that Call's character supposedly had fathered Newt through the prostitute in Lonesome Dove, and he never acknowledged it. But Newt was there, and if you remember, Gus would say, hey, "We know you're just dad." I thought, okay, so there's a father-son story.
10 years ago.
They're split apart. If I can bring them back together, split them apart again, and bring them back together, I'd have a good story. So I sat down and thought of how it would end, and I wrote the last scene of what became a 7-hour original screenplay using Larry's characters and adding some new ones. I wrote the last scene where Newt and Call separate, and I had Newt right off into the sunset, if you will. But the line that I still love, and it made me cry when I wrote it, knowing the full history of those characters. And that was, he didn't say, "You're my son and I'll love you forever." He said, "Call, that's Scots, they tell me." Never had no, whatever word I used, nothing bad attached to it. Boy, it was a lot better line than that. But in effect, he didn't say anything but except, "That's the name I'm giving you," and it still gets me. So when I wrote that scene, I said, this works. Then I backed it up and did a whole lot of stuff. And I was disappointed that we couldn't do the opening that I wanted, that introduced, what did I call him? Gideon Walker. Sam Elliott, my friend, really wanted to do it. I wrote it for him. And when we met him, he was playing baseball, because what people don't think about in Westerns, it was baseball out there. Guys were playing baseball. And met him, and then met him in the dressmaking shop when he was with one of the women that he was making a dress for. And anyway, Sam was all set to do it, except that CBS said, "No, he's overexposed. We don't want him to do it." And Sam called me one day and he said, "John, I can't wait anymore." I said, "Sorry." He said, I'm going to go do Tombstone." And he did. And a week later, Jeff Sagansky called me and said, "Okay, you're right. We should cast Sam Elliott." And I said, "Ship has sailed." And the other piece of casting that I should tell you that I had, after finishing the script and beginning to cast the movie and setting the director and all of that, I had, we'll call them creative differences with Mr. Pass and Mr. Halmy, and left the show. And the character that I used to be an attractive figure that Newt would be drawn to, that would be good to him in a way that Call never was, I wrote that for Charlton Heston, and he wanted to do it, and CBS was reluctant to do that. And when I left the show, they cast Oliver Reed. And Oliver Reed's a fine actor, but he's a overweight, slovenly looking man, not the character that came west and, conquered the land and everything that would have been the hero to Newt. I was able to get Reese Witherspoon in her first big role, really. And Barbara Hershey took over for Yeah, the director's daughter, Angela. Help me out here, Edgar.
Houston?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Delegate Houston?
Sybil Shepherd I had worked with Sybil Shepherd in a series I created called The Yellow Rose. And she stopped me in a restaurant once and she said, John, you got to put me in that part. I'm a lot sexier than Angela. Anyway, I didn't get to make the film the way I would have. And at one point, well, they cut out, there's a massacre in it, which Suzanne didn't want. And I talked to McMurtry and he said, of course it's got to stay in there. We learn from tragedy. That's a brilliant thing. You keep it in there. So I went in and won that battle before I left. I didn't know I was leaving then. And they, if you watch Return, there's a big, they slaughter people. And I set it up so it was motivated. Now it just happens and it's action and it's a Western, so people accept it. But no, I real people had a real reason to do that. I did love, when I wrote Cherokee Jack, I thought, how the heck do you find a heavy as exotic and colorful and nasty as Blue Duck in Lonesome Dove? In the book, they've cast Frederick Forrest in the movie, and I thought, no, Blue Duck, if you read the book or have read the book, Blue Duck he lives with you forever. He's a big son of a gun who's a butcher. So Cherokee Jack, I thought, I don't know if I'll find that guy, but then, okay, I'm going to block on his name now. Great, big, good looking guy, strong. Does a commercial for insurance now. What's his name? I'm embarrassed. I'm sorry. Anyway, he walked in cowboy boots and a hat and his hair in braids. And I said, that's it. I loved what he did. It came out quite well. I thought that Mike Robe, the director, mounted it beautifully. He almost got fired. We had troubles on that show, but it came out. It's a pretty good piece. I turned it on the other day. I hadn't seen it in all these years, and watched the first hour or so. And I think I'm going to watch some more of this. And there was a lot of good stuff in it. I thought Mike Robe did a terrific job mounting it. Barbara Hershey was really good. And Tim Scott, who played PI, that was one character I wanted right away. I called him to make sure, don't take anything because we want you back. So I have mixed feelings about it. I think it came out okay. I think it could have been dynamite. And really good for me as a writer to meet with Larry McMurtry several times and correspond with him, and I had his blessing all the way. And then after the picture ran, there was some publicity that came out where he said something that was disparaging, and he called me and he said, John, it's not about you. I said, you got to watch what you say to people. But that was great. I had working with him, and then I worked with Anne Rice. I worked with Jim Michener, of course. Yeah, boy, he's the greatest. I've been fortunate at 87. I consider myself fortunate to have known Jim, who we went to his 85th birthday in New York and his 90th in Texas, to see how we're supposed to age gracefully. And then I had the real honor of a former basketball player at UCLA named Mike Warren. I was captain of 2 national championship teams with Lou Alcindor. And Mike, I graduated from UCLA. I would go to I had box seats up in the nosebleed section, seats up in the nosebleed section. and go to the games. And then I would hurry home, didn't live too far from campus, and turn it on and watch on a black and white screen, watch the replays of the games. And after one game, the color commentator interviewed a player named Mike Warren, who was really a terrific basketball player. And she asked him what he was majoring in. He was theater arts and he wanted to be an actor. And I think at the time I was probably writing Peyton Place. I hadn't produced yet, but I used to keep a notebook and I'd write down people's actors' names or writers, directors I might want to work with if I ever held the scepter in my hand. And Mike was in there. So a few years later, I was producing a pilot for Quinn Martin called Most Wanted. And Robert Stack starred, and there was he had a young lady who was a police psychologist and a young man who was an undercover cop and another young man who was a techie who did all the, bugging of everything. And there was a scene in it with a cop that didn't have to carry any drama. But it was a good scene, 2.5, 3-page scene with Bob Stack. And I said to the casting director, as a ball player at UCLA, see if you can find him because he'd be just fine in this. And they found him, found Mike, brought him in, he read for us and he was terrific. And I put him in the show. And turns out that was his first really good scene that he'd ever had. He worked as a technical advisor on something like Fast Times at Ridgemont High or something. So he was grateful for that. And we've been friends ever since. And about the year 2000, he said, I'm with Coach a lot, Coach Wooden. And I've told him that when he passes, somebody's going to want to make a movie about him. And he said, I'd like to have the rights to that, Coach, so I can make a movie that does you justice, doesn't get turned into a Hollywood movie. And so he gave Mike the rights, and Mike called me and he said, would you like to help me protect the treasure? I said, I'm in. And we tried, I did probably 4 or 5 drafts of movie scripts, and it went everywhere. And nobody wanted to do a movie about an old white guy coaching basketball. So it never went anywhere. And finally, 3 or 4 years ago, I said to Mike, but meanwhile, Mike and I met with Coach once or twice a month and just picked his brain and, BS'd with him and learned what mattered most to him about what he did. So a few years ago, I think it was 2018, I said to Mike, we're never going to get a movie made. I want to write a play. So I wrote a 1-character play for Coach Wooden. And Bo Bridges came aboard and I premiered it up in Colorado. And then theater went dark and I've never done anything with it since. But the point of all that is I got to know John Wooden quite well. And one thing I'll share with you that he said, I said to him, Coach, we've spent hours and hours and hours talking about basketball and your life and your family and all good things like that. But I said, sometime I want to talk to you just about aging, because he was probably my age then. And he smiled and he said, John, just be content within yourself. And I thought, boy, so I had the great honor to be close to John Wooden and very close to Jim Michener after having done Centennial. And those were 2 men, along with my own dad, that I say, okay, try to hit those marks. As the body aches and the arthritis is here and the heart, I got a pacemaker and a stent, and but be content within yourself. Pass that on.
That's very good advice. So thank you, and break a leg on your next project.
Oh, thank you, Edgar. I think I'm probably finished with screen. I have a Western, contemporary Western with roots back to the past, with a black lead. Glenn Turman is a friend of mine, wonderful actor, And he wants to do it, and we're going to see if we can get it made as a not a big tentpole picture by any means, but real good character drama. And I also wrote with a partner a script about the beginning of the civil rights movement with Thurgood Marshall. And so those are out there. I don't know how easy it's going to be to sell. You know, an older white man writing a black story is not in vogue today with Hollywood's, you know, the money people. But they're good scripts and maybe. But meanwhile, I'm working on a big, long historical fiction, piece of historical fiction. It's 1865 to 1913, obviously dealing with race relations, and it's very relatable to today, and it chronicles America's only real original contribution to the arts. So let's see, I'm enjoying writing it. It's keeping me busy. I think I'll never finish it. I've got 758 pages finished now, but that's what I'm doing, and it's fun.
Don't give up. We need more high quality projects and work, so keep going.
Well, I thank you for that. And, you know, if I could, I would, but the truth of the matter is the film business was created by people in their 20s and 30s, and my time has gone. Unless you're Norman Lear, you're not going to get many phone calls answered. So I don't call. The business isn't chasing me, and I'm not chasing it. I try to remember I am who I am and not who I was. And I say, okay, just let me see if I can write something that somebody will want to make. But I'm not going to write any more screenplays. Those two are it. I'm going to stick to books.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wilder. I had one question.
John, Wendy, it's John.
Well, I didn't want to presume. Thank you, John. My question, and this may not be one answer to it, but what, after all these years and everything you've done, which is truly monumental, the breadth of your experience, especially all in the entertainment industry. You know, I mean, there are a lot of people who may have been child stars who then did become lawyers or, you know, businessmen.
I probably should have.
No, I don't think so. I think you have contributed too much really excellent work on both sides of the camera. But what is there? Are there perhaps one or two favorite close to your heart projects that just, there's only one? Oh, could you tell us about it?
I lied. I did have a picture. That is, I don't know if you can see it. Am I getting that up in the right place? That's Jim.
Yeah.
That's Jim Michener, who wrote all those great historical novels. And the reason I'm writing one now is he said, John, you have to do it, because he loved the screenplays that I did for Centennial. That work, I knew while I was doing it that I would never do anything as difficult or probably as worthwhile ever again. His book chronicles the development of the American West. It is also an ecological editorial about how we should, how Native Americans worked with the land, and we've polluted it and, you know, exploited it. It's a great book, and I was supposed to, if I digress, do we have time? Okay.
Always.
Okay.
Please, yes.
1976, 1987. I was leaving QM to go, I thought, to work with Grant Tinker, Mary Tyler Moore's husband, who I had known as an executive at ABC. And he wanted me to he was starting a little company called MTM. And he said, I have Alan Burns and James Brooks going to develop comedy for me. I want you to come and develop drama for me. So I thought, great, I really like Grant and new company and everything, it'll be good. So I said, absolutely. So I got a call from Frank Price, the president of Universal Studios. Every year, Frank called me while I was at QM doing streets and other things for Quinn. He'd say, you gotta come to you. And I said, I was at Universal. You don't spend any money on your pictures. I did not have a good experience there. I think you're terrific, Frank, but it's not the place for me. But every year he said, well, then come have lunch. And we'd go have lunch and he'd give me the pitch and I would say, thank you, I really appreciate it, but no. So now I know I'm leaving QM and I think I'm going with Grant Tinker. And I had lunch with Frank. And I think we had 2 scotches and then a bottle of La Doucette, a white wine from France. That's very good. And he said, now I got to get you, what can I do to get you to come, to get John Wilder to come to Universal? And I said, Frank, I told you, I've been there. I adore you, but I don't really want to work there. And he said, please, just tell me, what is it that you want? And I said, well, you did just buy a book recently that I love because part of it chronicles my mother's family's history coming west. They came across the Oregon Trail in 1851, settled Seattle. It's called 4 Wagons West, and they were the first 4. They settled Seattle. First school teacher there was his wife. And Walden, that's my mom's family, is what takes me back 13 lines directly to Brewster and also Bradford.
Okay.
And some of the other, John Alden. I mean, it's
Yeah.
my mom's family tree. It's like, whoa. So I said to Frank, he did buy a book that I really, really liked. And he said, what's that? And I said, James Michener's Centennial. And he said, that's yours. And I said, oh, shit. It really got me. He said, well, you want to do it? And I said, oh, I would love to do it, but I can't. I've told Grant I'm going to go over with him. And he said, don't say no now. Go home, sleep on it, and call me tomorrow. And I went home and I slept on it, and I thought, I love that book. I would love to be responsible for bringing that book to life. And I went in the next morning to see Grant, and he said, hey, John, come on, I got your offices down here. You get here. Alan and Jim are across the way here. You'll be right over here. I said, Grant, can we talk? And he said, what? And I explained to him, I'm going to swear again. He said, John Wilder, you're one of the great assholes of all time. He said, no. He said, that's a Tiffany project. He says, I'm starting up a little company here, and who knows what will come of it. But he said, no, if that's what you want to do, you'll do it great. Go do it, and go with God. So I called Frank and I said, I told Grant I want to come do Centennial. And he said, fantastic. We went back, had another lunch, more wine. But Frank Price, great executive, former writer, great executive. I remember looking at the book and saying, okay, what's the deal? He had a guarantee of 13 hours on the air at NBC and an option for 13 more. That meant I was going to the book would have to be broken somewhere in the middle, in case it had ended with 13, but it had to be able to continue for 13 more. And am I boring people? This is-
Not at
oh,
all. At least I'm riveted. so.
oh. I said, this, I mean, I really love Frank. I said, so you got 13 and 13. How do you see the book? How do you see it broken up? And he said, well, you tell me, it's your film. Thank you, sir. And he was the kind of executive that watched what you were doing. And if he had concerns about anything, he might call down and say, John, what are you doing about casting this or that? And just let me make the movie. And I love the project so much. First of all, you should see my book. It's all underlined, and I've got casting thoughts all through the thing from different people. Laid it out, structured it. You know, film, you may know this, film is primarily structure. And you got to have a structure. So laid it all out, and I broke the book with the cattle drive coming into Colorado, which began the new phase of the West. And we were, after they read the first couple of, first one was 3 hours, second one was 2 hours. After they read those first 5 hours, they said, let's go all the way. So they gave me a full commitment for 26. And I brought in two friends of mine, former writing partner, Jerry Zigman, and a writer-producer I had worked for, Charles Larson. And I wrote out the story and had them do teleplays on, I think, 5 or 6 scripts. And then in television, if you're the executive producer, you give it out, get it back, and usually you have to do another rewrite behind to put it right where it is in your mind. You're asking people to walk in your shoes good enough to get material up. But so I was supposed to direct the first 5 hours, and at that point, I'm supposed to direct the first 5 hours, then the cattle drive, and then the last 3-hour piece. Because I really wanted to direct, and I was so heavy into the writing, I said, no, I'm not going to be able to do this. And I hired directors to come in and direct the whole thing. And I got Frank to give me over budget for directing the first 3 hours. I said, I want to make a splash with this. And so he let me go over budget, over scale for a director, which in television didn't happen. And I brought in a gentleman, and he went up to Colorado, quote, to prepare. And I got a call from my line producer the week before we were starting. He says, John, this guy's not ready to direct this movie. He's not ready. I'm telling you, he's going to screw it up. And he got closer and closer, and got the first day of shooting. I got the dailies the next day, and I ran, it was like 2.5 minutes of film. And Frank came down and watched it, and it was a beautiful film. He said, oh, looks great, keep it up. I went back to my office and I said, any more film coming in? No. I said, okay. I went up to Frank's office and I said, I'm going to fire the director. What? You just had me pay over scale. And I said, Frank, we'll be here for 6 years making this movie. He's not ready. He is not ready. And I brought in a gentleman named Virgil Vogel, who had we've probably done 10 or 12 Streets of San Francisco's together. And he was an old film editor, loved John Ford. And I said, Virgil, when you're out there, I want to see dust come off a guy's shirt when somebody claps him on the back. I want a Western. Virgil was great. And he came into my office and he said, excuse my French again, guys. I said, okay. He said, I've been shooting shit all my life, and you give me something like this, and I don't have any time to prepare. And I said, Virgil, I'll shut down for as long as you need to prepare. He says, oh, no. You'll have film in the camera tomorrow. Flew to Colorado by 4 o'clock that afternoon. He had some great footage. former film editor who really studied John Ford and he couldn't talk to actors. I mean, really didn't. And when he did, it just insulted them. But he was a great shooter and a terrific guy. World War II bomber pilot, flew missions over Germany. Just a great guy. And I had a big cameraman named Duke Callahan, was about 6'5" and big, and Virgil was a tank. And they marched through, along with my line producer on the first 5 hours, Howard Alston, who had been the production manager for QM. And when I left QM and he saw that I was going to do this, he called and he said, John, any chance I could come over and line produce for you? And I said, are you kidding? And he said, no, I'll leave here if you like me to do it. And I said, yeah, done. And he was also a Starker. And the three of those guys, they climbed around in the mountains and forded streams and everything to get great shots. And it was a bugger. It was really hard. I got sick. I was quarantined home for a while because it just sapped me. But had meetings in my patio. got back to it. It came out. So it was a lot of work and a lot of work in post-production to pull things together. But Virgil and Harry Falk and Bernie McAveety, there was one other Paul Krasny. They shot beautiful film, and the actors that I was able to get, Timothy Dalton, Lynn Redgrave, Richard Chamberlain, Bob Conrad, good Bob Conrad story if you want to hear it. Bobby and I had known each other when I was acting in my teens and into my early 20s. And he was, we meet on interviews out for the same parts and everything. And so we knew each other. And he had since become a television star and was doing at the moment a series called Baba Black Sheep. And his agent, David Shapira, was in my office every day. Bob would be so good for Pasquinel. And having known Bob all this time, he was an American guy and about as American, he was Chicago, Middle East, Middle West. He's not a French trapper. Physically right, perfectly, but no. And we talked about Charles Bronson and Kirk Douglas and Harvey Keitel and different people. I couldn't find anybody. And finally, I'm going through the players directory. And if you remember, there was a French actor named Alain Delon, very handsome man, wonderful actor. And I looked at that picture and I said, oh my God, he could be Bob Conrad's clone. Let me rethink this. And so I said to Frank, they had him under contract, and Frank said, I sure would love it if he'd use Bob. And I kept saying, no. I said, I want to go out and talk to Bobby. And so now here's two guys who were, hoping for a day's work in a movie at some point when we were 19, 20. And now I've got this big office and they pull up a big, long limousine just for me to drive out to Bob on location, where he has a motorhome that's 2 blocks long. I'm exaggerating, but big fancy motorhome. And to me, it was just silly. And went in his dressing room and he poured some wine. And he said, so how about this? And I said, yeah, how about this? Now, Bob, I know you really want to play this part. He says, I do, brother. I really want to do that part. And I said, you got to do 3 things for me. Sure, what are they? I said, well, first, I want you to learn an authentic French-Canadian accent. And he said, but of course, monsieur. And I said, no, not Maurice Chevalier. I want French-Canadian, and I've hired Bob Easton to record all the dialogue for all the characters who have accents, because I had Raymond Burr and Sally Kellerman were German, and Richard Chamberlain was Scots, and so Bob, another old friend and from radio days, and terrific guy. Actually, he did a recording of everybody's dialogue and the whole script. And I said, I'm going to have that on tape for you, and I want it in your ear all the time. I want you to mimic, not the delivery, but mimic that accent. And he said, I can do that. I can do that. I said, okay. The second thing is, Bob, I said, you and I go back a long ways, and I know that Ever-Ready battery commercial that you did, I said, I know that battery's always on your shoulder. And I have cast Richard Chamberlain as McKeague. And you and I know that Richard is homosexual, and I know how you feel about homosexuals. Bob, he said, yeah. And I said, there's a line in the script. I don't want you changing anything without checking them. There are 2 lines in the script that I won't let you change. And I said, one of them's with Richard. And he says, what is it? And then the line is, maybe you're a better man than I am. And I said, I need you to deliver that to me, and I got to believe it. And he said, oh, you son of a, I said, I'm an actor. I can do that. And I said, damn well better, because it's important. He said, what's the other one? And I said, well, this may be even harder for you to cross your lips, but your wife is going to be Sally Kellerman, who is a foot taller than you, by the way. And that's as it is in the book. That's what I wanted. Frank said, you're crazy. You're going to cast that big, tall woman after Bob. You know how tall he is? And I said, yeah, he's my height. And he said, that's crazy. You're leading man. I said, in the book, she's a big, tall German girl, and he's this tough French trapper. And that's how the gene pool works. And I'm going to stick to that. He said, okay. So I got Sally in the part. And and Bobby said, so what is the line? And I said, you got to read this line. I have to believe it. And the line is, maybe I'm a coward. I said, you are anything but a coward. You wouldn't want anybody to ever say you were a coward. You're going to have to say it and make me believe it. And he said, you, words I won't use now. He said, let's do it. And we shook hands, and he turned in the performance of his life. When I ran the first 5 hours just for him, when I had it all put together and dubbed and locked down, I had him come in and looked at it, and he watched it and he cried. He was really wonderful. So anyway, Centennial, that's it. Nothing else touches it, because it's important. It's still important. Were you to run it, you'll get great information about history. It will bore you to tears in a history book, but when Lynn Redgrave and Dennis Weaver and all those, Stephen McHattie, who played the half-breed son, the blue eyes, great performances. Dick Prentice as Skimmerhorn. It's a marvelous film. I haven't seen it in all these years. I hope it stands up. We didn't have, of course, technologically, we were still shooting with those big old cameras, lugging them around, and didn't, it wasn't digital. We couldn't just print stuff forever. But within the constrictions of what we had production-wise in the 70s, it looks pretty damn good. And I think I want to run it before too long, because I hope it still stands up. It never got the glory that it deserved. I won the Writers Guild Award for it. But when the Emmys were going to be announced, the president of the studio, Sidney Sheinberg, told all of us producers on the lot, okay, big cigar in his mouth, okay, this year we're not putting a nickel into publicity on any of our shows. Sorry about that, guys. We're just not going to do it. So we got no PR. And it's a shame, because there were 20 people that should have had Emmys at that time for what they did. Barbara Carrera. it's just, and John Addison scored it for me. And music has been a short suit for me. And when UCLA offered an extension course while I was producing over at QM in music scoring, and I thought, I could benefit from going to that. So I went and I sat pretty much the same place every week. It was 12 weeks. And there was a couple that sat pretty much in front of me almost every time. And we just nodding acquaintance. And then the last lecture, they introduced the composer as John Addison. It's this guy who's been sitting in front of me, and he walks up on the stage, and he's a brilliant composer. So I called Joe James, the head of post-production, and I said, I want John Addison to score this if you can get him. And he said, sure, we'll get him. And John came in and he wrote themes for all of the major characters. And I was getting nervous about what he was writing. And I called him one night. I was watching PBS, and Appalachian Suite was on. And I called him and I said, John, I'm watching PBS, his Appalachian Suite. You're going to get it. He was thinking the same way. And I hope the score holds up today. I don't, things have changed, gotten so much better technically. That was 70, 78, he was scoring it. That's a long time ago. I mean, what they do with film and effects and music and everything. But I know at the time I said, I'll never, first of all, it was 26 hours, beginning, middle, and end. So it's one big, long story. David Wolper asked me to come over and produce something called Hunter Yo with him. And I didn't want to do it. Ruth B.B. Hill had written a book about Native Americans. I loved the book, but I didn't want to be the Indian producer. So went over and met with him, and he said, well, I guess we're tied, aren't we? And I said, what's that? And he said, longest film ever made. And I said, oh, you made 13 hours. You shut down for a year. You picked up and shot 13 more. We did 26 all at once. We're in first place. Anyway, sorry to ramble on so long, but you hit upon
you've answered my question eloquently and wonderfully, and it just underlines quality speaks for itself long term, whether it was produced in the 70s, whether it was produced in the 40s. Sometimes that stuff just, there's such value to it. And today there's a lot of slick work. There's a lot, computers make effects and all that easy to do, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're well done and touching. I mean, you think about Hitchcock, you think of what he did technically with his films, without all the computers and everything. And it was much more creative, and I think had more heart in the long run.
Universal has the house that he used, that distorted house, that pretty cool. Yeah, and it's really, at least for me, it's always the story that counts. I mean, we're storytellers, and that's, if the story's good, I'll hang with it. But anyway.
Absolutely. And I have to say, just personally, I had a lot of friends who were completely hooked on Return to Lonesome Dove.
Good.
So, I mean, people remember quality, I think. And, it is so wonderful to hear your reminiscences of, making such a mammoth film, and putting the attention in. It sounds like you really squeezed the money out of Universal to make them do it right. And
they let me go a little over, but it wasn't, we did it we did it economically. At one point they were all concerned about how much it was going to go over. So, well, we got it. We'll make this for, we're not going to break the bank, and we didn't. but Return to Lonesome Dove was 7 hours, and that took me a year to write that screenplay. But 26 hours, I think, stack them up against each other. It's like, hey, I could do Lonesome Dove all day compared to the lift Centennial was. So it's very interesting that you asked that question, because really, as I look at everything I've done, I mean, good quality, but only one film was worth the effort and everything for what it can teach you. The National Education Association gave college and high school credits for watching the series. And that's Jim. I mean, he was an historian. We were driving through Colorado one day and showing him locations, and everything was pretty spread out. And he said, "John, I wish I had the book back." I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "You did some things with those characters that I never thought to do. And I would like to come back and put them in the book." And that was pretty nice.
That's a great compliment.
Well, I said, "Jim, you're an historian and a wonderful novelist. I'm a dramatist. And I understand that you can't have, for instance, McKeague just drift off as he does in the book." So I gave him the whole big final, yellow apron. You got to see him. You've invested all this time in this actor, these characters on screen. You got to pay him off. You got to. And he said, yeah.
Well, this has just been wonderful, John. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I think we could go on for hours, but sadly, it's probably getting to be about dinner time for you.
No, 6:48 here. Oh my God, it's late for you guys. I'm going to take my wife out to dinner, and
oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, we all send a toast for in thanks for your wonderful presentation, and Walden for getting the ball rolling, and Frank Morgan for pulling this together. I mean, it's just, we are truly honored.
I see a gentleman who's taking a drink right now, and I don't believe we've spoken. Is that Edgar? Oh, no, there's Edgar.
No, that was, Mark Bush just had a sip of something.
Okay, all right. I think he was sitting with his wife. I could see him.
Yes, very much so.
I have a question for you, if it's okay.
Sure.
As you reflected on Centennial and all the quality work that you've been a part of, Hollywood today, or the motion picture industry, just seems to have a different formula now than I think when you were working. Is that a fair assessment? And how would you categorize that, or how would you explain it?
One thing is that the studios have all been taken over by big corporations, and everything they develop is per marketing. You can, if you think about the early film business, these guys were showmen. They were entrepreneurs and showmen. They loved telling stories and making movies, and MGM, Warner Brothers, Fox, Universal. That's one big difference. There are to my knowledge, no showmen running studios anymore. It's all from a distance, and all research, and numbers tell you what kind of thing you should do and what you should do. And if you can't get a certain actor or star, not making the movie, no matter how good the story is. That's so different from when, Dennis Morgan and Janice Page were supposed to be in Casablanca, and turned out to be Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall because they weren't available or something. So it's different in that regard, in that it's all it's all research driven and it's always been for profit. But, Daryl Zanuck, those guys, they also like to make a good movie. I mean, it was David Lean who made me want to be a filmmaker, Robert Bolt. You see Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago and say, I want to make big movies like that. And that's why I feel lucky to have been able to do Centennial. It was on a small screen, but when I ran it for people, I put it up on the big screen, saved it at 185, and it looked pretty good. Does that answer your question, Mark?
That's a great answer, and I agree with you. One question that I'm trying to figure out, that there seems to be certain messages in a modern show, certain promotions, for lack of a better word, is that profit driven also, or is there something else happening behind the scenes?
Well, I'm
trying not to be specific, but
if you want to be specific, I could probably answer it more specifically. But are you talking about gender and race and those things that are? I mean, I noticed that there's in almost every TV show I look at. First of all, there's a lot of profanity that is part of people under 30 speak differently than you and I do. So that's part of it. That is, there are characters that seem somehow sometimes to me to be shoehorned into a story to put those types on screen, and that's for marketing reasons. I mean, nothing on television is done without what kind of numbers are we going to get with this? Who's going to be watching it? I mean, it takes all the fun out of it, really. Unless, like, if you're on a series, it's a lot of fun to work with people.
I agree that the marketing, and I sense, you could correct me if I'm wrong, product placement, not just physical products that you buy, but also certain ideologies, maybe with say a redefining of the family or a redefining of faith. How these it appears to me that a lot of the modern shows, and obviously the profanity, and I wonder if the profanity is reflecting society or they're influencing society.
It is reflecting society. I don't know if you're around young people much. I taught on a college campus for 21 years and happened to be a Christian college campus. So kids were not throwing profanity off the wall from time to time. But after one class, a young woman, were two young men and myself, and young woman stayed to discuss something. I've forgotten what it was. She dropped the F-bomb about 5 times, and I said, whoa, let me just stop you for a second. She said, yes. I said, you're in a room here with an older gentleman and 2 young gentlemen who have not used profanity in your presence, and yet you're blasting our ears with that. Are you aware of that? And let's talk about it, because maybe I'm just old-fashioned, but it seems to me like, profanity is kind of a sign of a weak vocabulary. So why? And she said, she was embarrassed. She said, I didn't even realize. I said, I didn't think you did, but something to be aware of. And I've had thank yous from her through the years now for calling her on it, because it's easy to do. I mean, when I went off into the service, I came back, everything was effing this and effing that. A friend of mine said, you know what I did this weekend? I said, what? I asked my mom to pass the effing butter. So, it's a question of decency and dignity, I suppose, and it's not as plentiful as it used to be, but I'm trying to understand it. I mean, I have 7 grandchildren now, and they won't use it under my roof, but I get it. It's two of my proteges, Alex Gonza and Howard Gordon, created a great show based on an Israeli series called Homeland, and it was really, really well done. And I'm watching the main titles, and I hear F 2-3 times during the main titles, and what? Why is that necessary? And it's all about bringing the young people to watch the show. Yeah.
I think also sometimes they want the the censorship classification. They don't want to get the lower, they want to have that R rating. So you drop enough F-bombs and you show enough violence and maybe enough thigh, and you'll get the treasured R rating that seems to sort of possibly bring in more people.
Yes. While I was still producing, we had broadcast standards in television. Every week, broadcast standards executive would read the script, come to my office, and go through all the places where she wanted things changed for one reason or another. And I could usually get like 2 dams and a hell through a script. But that they don't have broadcast standards anymore. I remember having to cut out of a scene in the Yellow Rose. They were in a tavern, and the director opened with a cute barista, waitress picking up a tray with drinks on it and turning and walking through to the table. And he followed her across, and he followed her hips, and then off to 2 characters at a table or something. But they said, you got to take that out. You can't be doing that. I said, okay. I didn't mind. But now my friend Stephen Bochco, he said, you got to push the envelope. He said, we're competing with cable television, and no holds barred on Fox or cable. So and he pushed the envelope a lot.
He did indeed.
They were great shows. He was a great writer and a really good producer. But
and a lot of the shows hold up today. I mean, I have been looking at a lot of older, series and that type of thing, and some of that is just amazing. It's just as fresh today as it was back when it was originally aired. So, and of course, that's one reason I'm such a fan of old time radio, is because it's a medium that you listen to these shows and they absolutely hold up. And some of them are really very contemporary themes, even now, 50, 60 years later.
There are universal themes that work. I remember listening to radio, Wendy, when I was a little boy up in Washington. We left there when I was 7, so I'm going to say 4, 5, 6, 7, listening in our little living room at a Philco radio, and we'd have the fire on in the fireplace and be dark in the room, and we'd listen to the radio, and it was kind of like I guess like the cavemen sat around and told stories like that. Radio is great. It was great.
Yeah, well, it is, and your career is a real inspiration. I mean, your journey from being a child actor to not only an actor, but a producer, a writer. And so much of the really quality stuff comes down to the writing and the casting.
Always.
That's the spine of the whole thing. Without the writing, doesn't matter how good the acting is. I mean, you can overcome actors, and I've been called on to do this in my own career. Sometimes you're handed some really lousy lines. And I once had I was reading a new play, and the fellow who ran the workshop, he he said, you know, when after it was over, he said, Wendy, the problem with you is this is a play development workshop. And we need to understand when we need to hear it when the lines aren't any good. And he said, you managed to gloss them over in such a way that they sound good. So I did myself out of work that way. But,
That's funny. Yeah.
and I didn't know I was doing it. It's just, okay, I've got this line. What do I do with it? You know, I think it's just the instinct. I really should probably let you sign off, John.
All right.
We've kept you at this for quite a while, but my goodness, this time is just
terrific.
blown by.
Took me down. Walden does this to me from time to time. Down memory lane. I mean, my first appearance on a stage, I was 4, tap dance. Was in vaudeville for 3 years as a little tyke. So, and I look back and I say, man, from vaudeville to radio to movies, watching television come in.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I got early work in television was a lot of people from radio transitioned into television, and they would call upon people they knew in radio, like Virginia Gregg, John Daner, Vic Perrin, worked a lot, Howard McNear, transitioning to television and then film. And I did one show finally for cable in 2000, I guess, an Anne Rice book that I adapted. And that was a little different from network television, but anyway, I look back and I think, as I said to Edgar, or who did I say it to at the beginning? No, it was Mark, not Mark, Frank. I said, I think there had to be 3 other guys, because it's a long way back.
You've managed to roll 3 lifetimes into one, John. It's truly, truly impressive. And I hope you'll feel free to come back anytime. We would love to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you so, so much. And Walden, thank you for
no problem.
Your
Thanks, John.
Hey. Walden is a great friend to this club and has been so, so helpful.
Walden is an amazing guy. He's a producer and a half.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that. So,
I wanted also, Walden, I just wanted to mention, do I have it here? Tommy Cook. Did you see Tommy's,
GoFundMe? Yeah. Bobby Bazzi talked to, I think there's an update. I don't know if you saw it. It looked like the union's going to settle with Ed Asner's estate. So I think that's going to take care of the shortfall for people who may or may not know. I think when the union got together to merge, I think there was a shortfall with the insurance process. And I read the big article this week. I don't know if you saw it, John. It looked like the union's going to settle. So that might take care of people's health insurance.
I didn't, but Tommy called me the other day and he said, John, don't worry about me. I'm not on the streets. I got a little money in the bank, but shoot, I thought I had it. Was going to pass on
if you search for GoFundMe and put Tommy Cook's name, you can see it, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that'd be the quickest way to do it. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention that because I'm sure everybody has heard Tommy and he's a good man.
You bet. All right, John, have a wonderful dinner and thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Really my pleasure. My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that was truly wonderful. Frank, as always, between you and Walden, we are truly blessed with such extraordinary programs. My gosh, talk about hitting a home run. This This is a grand slam home run as far as I'm concerned. So thank you so much. And John, you're welcome to stay if you want to hear the answers to the quiz. You probably know all of them anyway.
I doubt it. But I am going to take my wife to dinner. She's been patiently waiting in the other room.
We'll thank her on our behalf from us for lending you to us for this time this evening.
Thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome.
Take care all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So
I'm trying to shut it down. Oh, here we go. There you go. If I could read, I'd be in radio. No. Leave, it says I'm going to leave you now. Bye.
All right. Bye, John. There, his tile turned into Mary Whipple on my screen. Sally, would you like to do the honors for the answers to the quiz and put us all out of our suspense?
I think I'll just leave you in suspense. You know, maybe in
Don't
May.
forget, got the answers
Maybe in
written.
June. Oh man! All right. Wendy just wants to know if she's gonna pass. That's all she wants. She wants to know if she's gonna pass the quiz because she wants the gold star. I know how it is. I know what's
I
happening.
never get a gold star on these quizzes, but I do know the answer to the first question.
I know what's happening. All right, let me open the poll, which has been running in the background. Here it looks like we've had a number of people participate, so I'm going to end the poll now. Can you see the results? Anyone?
Yes, thank you.
All right, now just because the majority selected something doesn't mean that's necessarily right. The answer key lives in here. In here. Just kidding. I haven't looked at this yet because I play along too. All right. Number one, we have Miss Brooks often has to play second fiddle to Mr. Boynton's pet frog. What is that frog's name?
B for the.
Okay. Oh, Dubel. I don't know what. I just don't even know. If that's a real name, I'm sorry. That's all I can say. But the majority does win this one. B. McDougal is the correct answer. McDougal, the frog. Number two, Archie Andrews and his pals attended which high school? Looks like most everybody went with Riverdale, and you are correct. C, Riverdale. Maybe you've watched the reboot to the new show. Quite a bit different than the Archie Andrews of radio days. Number three. There are all types of teachers. Leroy Forrester took lessons from a piano teacher. What was her name? Ooh, we were kind of all over the place on this one. Some of us chose Miss Piper, some said Miss Draper, some said Mrs. Munson, and one said Mrs. Gates. Well, the majority still does win. The correct answer is A, Miss Piper. Miss Piper. Sounds like she should have been an organ teacher, but you know.
Sounds like what?
She should have been an organ teacher.
Number four. On Life with Luigi, Luigi attends night school to work on his English. What was the name of his teacher? What? It wasn't misspelling? What? It wasn't mistaken or misdeeds? Ha! No, no one fell for it, Frank. No one fell for it. Except that I was kind of then thinking, well, maybe it is one of these ones, and that was sneaky. But the answer is D, Miss Spalding. Number five. Gildersleeve and Judge Hooker both sought the attention of the new dance teacher in town. What was her name? Ooh, we were kind of all over the place here as well. Miss Tanzer, Miss Bailarina, and Miss Densus all got a few votes, but Miss Del Rey received the most. And good thing, because that is the correct answer. D, Miss Del Rey. Frank gave me a little background. He was very sneaky in that last question. All of those names are apparently words for dancing. I suspected from the bailar for Spanish, but Tanzer and Dansus. I wasn't sure, but there you go. Now you know. Number 6, teachers have been known to play episodes of this program while giving lessons in American history. Which program is it? I have done this. So I knew this. I am living proof that this question is correct. I am sorry for those of you that chose A and B. The correct answer is C. You are there. Though then you have to explain to kids that no, they weren't actually there. Sometimes that gets a little confusing to 8-year-olds. Number 7. This actor was fluent in German and French and occasionally played a French teacher on the radio. This was just mean.
Should have been Gerald Moore. No.
This was just mean. Just cruel. Just when I thought I was feeling safe and comfortable in the quizzes, Frank throws this at me with unpronounceable things in robot voice. Let's just think, if you're saying things normal, maybe you can say things in robot voice. Nothing is normal. And all of a sudden your understanding of phonics is out the window. And apparently this was also a very confusing and tricky question for everyone because everyone was kind of all over the place, but 4 of you got it right. The answer is D, Gerald Moore. D, Gerald Moore. Mark is correct. I expected nothing less. Well done, sir. Number 8. The Quiz Kids brought together some of the best of the best intellectually gifted youngsters, but who was the man who rang the class bell and asked the questions? Ooh.
Joe Kelly.
We were split between Art Linkletter and Don McNeil. Each got 3 votes. The majority went for Joe Kelly. And the correct answer is B, Joe Kelly. Bonus points if you can name what Art Linkletter did. Come on, Mark.
People are funny.
Thank you.
Yeah. Kids say the darndest things.
That too.
That was the book.
You're right.
I didn't actually know, but I knew Mark would.
Thank you.
Number 9. Frank Merriwell and his friends attended Yale on NBC for 3 months in the spring of 1934 and 3 years beginning in 1946. I really want to know what Frank Merriwell was doing in 12 years. Why did it take him so long to get back to Yale? I mean, what was he doing? What, he like backpack around Europe for 12 years? That seems very
Football
suspicious.
player.
Seems suspicious. Who portrayed the intelligent and athletic Frank during the later incarnation? Oh, we were all over the place on this one as well. We were one person went for Stacey Harris. We equally went for Les Tremaine and Lawson Zerby. That just doesn't phonologically make sense. And the majority went for Richard Crenna, but 4 of you are correct with the person with the non-phonetically accurate last name. Lawson Zerby wins. D. Last question. I'm sure you're all very thrilled. Ronald Coleman and Benita Hume gave life to radio's Ivy College as its president and his wife. What were the given names of the halls?
A few said Philip and Andrea, some said Wallace and Vera, one said Vincent and Martha. The most went for William and Vicky. And you're correct. The answer is B, William and Vicky. Who got all 10? Frank.
Frank, you did the.
You cheated. You looked at the answers. We are going to have to talk about detention after class.
Of course, Frank got them all right.
Well, now that we unfortunately we still have one whole more quarter to get through school, so no one is getting a get out of school early card. So
my favorite questions were number 7, the answers, because you had Adolphe Monjou. French.
Okay,
here.
come on, Frank.
French.
I'm like,
I think we found the Sally Stevens next B Benaderet.
you know, I was even thinking, gosh, she was even given a shout out on the big broadcast on Sunday, and I was like, oh, Frank puts B in the quiz, I'm gonna be so annoyed, but I'm gonna be ready for it. Then instead I get Adolf and Zerby.
Zerby.
There was Anthony Zerby as well.
I'll tell you.
Are they related? George asks if Anthony and Lawson are related. Are they son and father or cousin? Does anyone
They
know?
pronounce their name the same way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the real question.
They're sisters.
Done.
Well, I think Frank's absolute high point were the answers he came up with for number 4. That was my favorite, and I hats off to Sally for keeping a straight face while she was reading those answers.
It was hard. This was a very challenging month for me.
Well, thank you very much, Miss Stevens, for sharing your expertise with us this evening. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So now I think we're at the point where I will stop our recording and we can proceed. It's a question in chat. Is it? Yeah, George, you had the same question I had about Anthony and Lawson. But we will stop the recording. Recording stop.